help Christopher Browell.
Thank you for calling Bradford District Care NHS Foundation Trust. Your call is important to us and will be answered by our next available administrator. Please note that your call may be recorded for monitoring and training purposes. All of our administrators are busy at the moment. Please hold the line and we will answer your call as soon as possible.
I'm ringing on behalf of my brother, Mr. Talib Hussain, date of birth 15/9/1960, and I wanted to speak to Mr. Christopher Browell.
Okay. Well, just bring the file up.
Yeah.
Right, just bear with me.
Oh, hi, Mr. Browell. How are you?
Well, thanks. You alright?
Yes, okay. Is this a convenient time to talk?
Yeah, it's not too bad. I can't stay on too long, but
Okay.
it's not too bad, yeah.
Okay. So, have you managed to get us any updates?
No, I can give you a call back tomorrow. I'll have a read the notes and see what you're requesting, and then I haven't got anything for you today, though, but I can try and get you something for tomorrow or the day after.
Okay, alright, that's fair enough. Obviously, I'm slightly concerned because, as you can appreciate, we're now, we've been put into this very precarious situation. My brother's not receiving any support at all for a number of years, and not receiving any financial support as well. And there's no way to resolve the situation. Obviously, at the same time, we're being targeted effectively. And in my experience, we're being targeted primarily using our, relatives or siblings, nefarious siblings that are.
You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me? Hello?
She's right.
Yep. Hello. Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Let me just move on now. Can you hear me now? Hello? Chris, can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay, alright. I think there's maybe something wrong with this phone. I'm not sure. Anyway, I was explaining that, look, we're presently in a very precarious situation where my brother is receiving no support at all, What's concerning to me is not only he's not receiving any financial support, he's got no access to any health care. Now, fortunately, my brother I'm still caring for him, and he doesn't require any support, healthcare support at this moment in time. But as you can appreciate, this situation is very precarious for both Talib and myself, because nothing's been resolved at this moment in time. And this has been an ongoing matter now for several years. So I mean, in the absence of speaking to yourself, because the reality is that he has been discharged from his psychiatrist, and who would be the most appropriate person I need to speak to regarding various outstanding matters to get a resolution?
Well, I mean, yeah, I've made a note of what you requested last time we spoke on the 25th of January. So I can try and get you some answers from that, but as I've tried to get you answers before, they're not always forthcoming. But all I can do is try and request some answers about that. Other than that, then I'd be the first point of contact, I would have thought.
With respect, Mr. Browell, and we've had this conversation many times before, you may be able to you're acting as a mouthpiece or a liaison officer for the council, but you're not in a position to resolve anything, are you?
No, not really, no.
Yeah, so, and you're not the decision maker, are you?
No.
Okay, so because you're not able to resolve anything and you're not the decision maker, then all the things that you can do is relay information from me to the decision maker, and relay information from the decision makers to me. So you're acting as effectively a liaison officer. Would that be a fair assessment?
Well, kind of. Unfortunately, usually I don't get a great deal of response or replies back when I try and pass on the information or request that you make to me, to be honest. So all I can do is kind of ask those questions and see if I'm provided any answers. So
yeah, but I mean, more importantly, I mean, obviously you're a point of contact. You're a point that I can liaise with. But you're rightly, they don't have to give me any information, so therefore they don't have to give you any information. So therefore, I mean, I'm sure that's not it's not a limitation, or it's not something that like you're not in a position. It's not something that you're doing deliberately, is it? It's that you're not in a position to do anything. You're in a position to do, which you have been doing, is relay information from the decision makers, and obviously take some information from me and try to get me information, or try to get Talib some information. That's been very unsuccessful in the past, where Talib has asked you for his balance, but that's not been forthcoming. But all I can, and in my part, Mr. Browell, knowing the fact that you act as effectively a relay, all right, as a point of contact, all I can do is express to you my concerns or issues as a point of contact, because obviously that, at least that way, you're getting some update upon Talib, because obviously Talib, the local authority, still have a fundamental legal duty of care to Talib. I mean, if I was to say I'm not going to speak to you anymore, or if I'm going to say, look, you have no, if I was being very restrictive, that would obviously necessitate you from, in order to take further steps. I'm looking to mitigate that by obviously contacting you proactively, trying to identify some issues, so you're fully aware that there's like you can get some secondary information, maybe not directly from Talib or not directly meeting Talib, but at least you can get my assurances that, look, that Talib's all right in my care. He's not currently, like, he's being taken care of. And obviously, we've had this discussion in the past where I've explained to you that obviously that comes at a cost. It's not for free. Obviously, and I've made the council fully aware of my remuneration policies. But what the reason for my call today, or the reason that I'm trying to contact you, is that obviously I'm just trying to highlight the precarious situation that's been created now. All right, because obviously Talib has absolutely no access to his finances, and is not likely to have access to his finances, is he? He's got, and more importantly, I can manage his finances through alternative means, through my independent means, because obviously he's not going hungry. I'm feeding him stuff, but more than his finances, you can understand this is not just like a private individual whose money you've got. This guy is somebody who's got like mental health problems, and it's got like emotional and psychological problems. All right, it's got behavioral problems. It's got mobility issues and all these things I'm having to manage. And what concerns me more than the finances, because money I can substitute, but with regards to his health and well-being, that is that is an authority that I require, which I don't have any legal authority effectively to do anything. So that's a focus of concern, moving away from the finances, because there's nothing you can do to resolve that. Obviously, I need to speak to somebody who can resolve that, and that's why I asked who is the most appropriate person to speak to, or who is willing to speak to me, because I'm not going to be putting things in writing. But moving away from the financial aspect, what is a concern to me now is his health and well-being aspect. As you know, his lasting power of attorney for health and welfare has been removed. So has his lasting power of attorney for property and finances. But in the case of the property and finances, that's been substituted by somebody else, namely Bradford Council, namely your employers, and are effectively now legally culpable or accountable for his finances. But the present situation, which is a concern, and I'm sure you will share this with me, is that there's nobody legally in place to basically responsible for his health and welfare, because I can't legally act as his in his health and welfare best interest legally, because you've removed that, but you've not put something in place. So this is an aspect of concern that I have, is that presently I have no legal authority to in place to act in my brother's best interest, which is now causing me which potentially is going to be causing me a great deal of problems. Because should an emergency or something arise, what authority do I have to act on his behalf? And so those are the issues that I wanted to bring to your attention, because obviously at this time it seems that you, the local authority, are acting with complete malevolence, because rather than looking to resolve the situation, you're muddying the waters more by looking to effectively get my siblings or relatives to raise a false flag safeguarding alert, so you can then be justified into pursuing court proceedings. That's what I seem to see the agenda as being, as because presently you have no legal, the local authority, have no legal authority over Talib's health and welfare. All right. I did have legal authority because my brother had signed me a lasting power of attorney. You, the local authority, have colluded with the judges and had that removed. But it is slightly negligent on your part to the local authority's part to leave my brother in this situation. So those are the concerns I have, and I want to know how this can be resolved with.
Is Talib not able to kind of, in your view, does he need an LPA for health and welfare, or would he be able to kind of make those decisions himself?
Well, see, this is the problem. Legally speaking, my brother is obviously somebody, as you know, who has mental health problems, who has, behavioral problems, and he is completely reliant upon myself to make those decisions. He has been reliant upon myself, for the last 20 or more years. So he does not make those decisions. Similarly, he does not manage his own finances. Now, I have personally been managing his finances for the last 22 years, since the year 2000. Prior to that, my mother was managing his finances as his DWP appointee, an elderly Asian woman who does not speak English. So he himself has not been managing his own finances from, I think, 1987 or something, or since the start of the 90s. All right. So just because he does not manage his own finances does not mean that he lacks mental capacity to manage his finances. Because obviously he can make the decision that I want somebody to support me in this, or somebody to manage those for him. So presently, that's the role I play. I play the role of not only managing his finances, but also acting in his best interest in relation to liaising with public authorities such as GP practices or the hospital or any the district care trust, or any liaising on his behalf and acting in his best interest. But most importantly as well, Mr. Browell, is that he doesn't read English. He doesn't manage his own correspondence or anything like this. Those are all things that I do, and I do those under his authority that he's granted to me informally to begin with. But now because now that he's put in a lasting power of attorney, then we've moved on from the informal aspect to making it more formal. But if you're saying the fact that it would be unfair or unjust for anybody to say that he should be making those decisions. No, somebody needs to be making those decisions. So you, the local authority, have said in relation to his money, we want to make those financial decisions on his behalf. All right, and that's what you've already done. But by doing so, you are making the point that he lacks capacity. But then if he lacks capacity to make financial decisions, which you've railroaded through now, which obviously is not correct, but obviously that's what you're saying. But you've left the person in a situation where he's not able to manage, like who's making the decisions regarding his health and welfare. If he is not it's not lacking capacity, but if he lacks the competency, all right, because many people lack the competency to do things. For example, I'm sure you lack the competency to legally represent yourself in a criminal case. So therefore, lacking competency, you can then instruct legal representatives who are competent in the legal profession. So it's not an issue of mental capacity, it's an issue of competency. Now this individual does not speak English. He does not read or write English. He does not understand English. So that's a lack of competency, which I obviously compensate for. But if the local authority are effectively saying, well, we don't want to deal with you, effectively, and you've mentioned this to me as well in the past, didn't it, Mr. Browell? I'm not the client, your client. You want to deal directly with Talib. Talib, recognizing his lack of competency in many spheres and domains, has authorized me to act on his behalf. You, the local authority, are saying, well, we don't want to deal with you. We don't have to deal with you. So if you're not going to be dealing with me, then what resolution is there? So you're saying, well, we don't need to deal with you regarding his finances because we're going to start acting as his deputy in taking charge of his finances. But then who is responsible for his health and welfare now?
I would have thought that. I mean, I understand what you're saying about competency, but with you actually, providing those, like if you say informal carer duties and Talib is with you, if you attended any appointments, you'd be able to support Talib to make those decisions and kind of advise him informally. I would have thought. I don't see how it'd affect his actual day. It's putting him at risk.
Okay. Well, let me explain that to you. If I didn't do that, would you accept that that's placing him at risk?
Good question. Yeah, it depends on the situation. I would have thought.
So for example,
it could be. Yeah, you're right. It could be seen that you're placing at risk or like neglecting.
Yeah.
Talib or something like that.
So for example, if Talib has a fall and he breaks his leg, let's just say for argument's sake, and I don't do anything, all right. Would that not be placing him at risk because he's got no means to use the telephone, he's got no means to get out of the property, he's got no means to contact anybody without my assistance? So would that would surely be placing him at risk, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So because I would just like to give you an anecdote of what happened to me. That's exactly what happened to me in 2014, I think. Or sorry, not 2014. No, in 2018, the council was sending in care staff, and the care staff were coming in to provide my mother with care and support through the best service. All right. On one occasion, my mother had fallen. I did not pick her up because I knew the care staff were coming. When the care staff came, I said, "Oh, thank God you're here," because obviously my mum's fallen, and I would like you to assist her up. And the care staff told me that we're not going to do that. We've been given instructions by Bradford Council. If somebody's fallen, not to pick them up. All we're going to do is we're going to ring up an ambulance, and that's all we're willing to do. So your own care staff, all right, are unwilling to assist somebody other than ring up an ambulance. And then obviously the ambulance was called by the care staff. I think this was at 9 o'clock in the evening that my mum had fallen and the care staff had arrived. And the ambulance didn't arrive until 4 o'clock in the morning. and that was in 2018. And as you're fully aware now, the situation with the ambulance staff and the national strikes and everything is much more worse. But the point I'm trying to make here is that, the risk of Talib falling, all right, you, the council, won't take on that risk or responsibility, all right. And so therefore, if because I was on site and I could do something, but as it presently stands, it is a serious risk. If you're putting me now in a situation where you wouldn't pick up Talib, other than ring up an ambulance, but you're now placing me in a situation where I legally can't do anything. Now, in the past, where I may have done things, all right, they have been done because I had legal authority to do so. This aspect of doing things informally, can you appreciate? It's not something that I'm willing to do or intending to do, because it places me at risk. Because obviously it does not recognize my rights. So whereas I have acted in for my brother in the past, prior to 2016, I have done so because I was his DWP appointee. So I had some sort of legal authority to manage his finances. So, and if I'm managing his finances, then as a result of that, I should also be managing his care as well, because then I'm taking the money. Does that make sense? If I'm taking responsibility, for example, Mr. Browell, if I'm taking responsibility for your finances, not only do I have to feed and clothe you, but then if something happens, I have to take the financial resources to put you in a car and take you to the doctor in order to see the doctor, because I'm taking financial responsibility for you. It comes with an element of providing you with extended services. The present situation is that you, the local authority, are now in charge of his finances and asking me to do things, all right, where there's no legal framework in place. That is the concern I have, is that I'm doing these things, and the only legal framework I have put in place is the fact that I'm doing these things under a remuneration policy to circumvent any risk happening to my brother, which obviously, as you know, I've been fully doing now. I've been, making sure that should something happen, but it's still placing my brother in a legal problem, isn't it? Does that make sense? Because you, the local authority, have removed his lasting power of attorney for finances under the grounds that he lacks capacity, and therefore you're going to be managing his finances. Okay, you've done that unlawfully or whatever, but it's negligent upon both yourself and the office of the public guardian, leaving somebody who is a vulnerable person without provisions in place to deal with his health and welfare.
What would you suggest is the solution then?
Well, look, I've already provided the solution, which the decision makers cannot accept, because obviously you need to. The only solution is that it comes down to the Capacity Act. Now, the Mental Capacity Act and the lasting power of attorneys, as a consequence of the Mental Capacity Act 2005, the primary thing is to do with mental capacity. And obviously we've had these discussions before. We're not going to delve into them again. But the solution, the only resolution, is that either my brother has mental capacity or he doesn't. If you're saying that he doesn't have mental capacity, so you've taken charge of his finances, you have created the problem. So the problem is that you've identified that he lacks mental capacity, so you've taken charge of his finances. But then you also, as a consequence, need to put in provisions in place to take responsibility for his health and welfare. Now, the resolution that you, the local authority, fully aware of this. I know that you may not be fully appreciative of this, but your decision makers are fully aware that, look, we've got all his money and we're leaving Talib in a vacuum. Hence why several attempts have been made to abduct and kidnap my brother under the false pretenses that I'm not caring for him properly. So the only resolution that you, the local authority, can do is to raise, number one, a false flag safeguarding alert saying that he's been neglecting in my care and you're concerned about his health and welfare. So therefore you can then instigate new court of protection proceedings and therefore effectively try to remove me from Talib's life, as you have done in my mum's case, where you want to be providing care for Talib with the money that you've already legally taken. That's one resolution. That attempts have been made to do this, throughout 2022. Firstly, by getting Manningham Housing Association to, do a contrived gas safety inspection, and then getting the inspectors to raise a false flag. That's failed. All right, because obviously, I paid for the inspectors, paid for the inspection myself, and they were not allowed entry to the property. So hence why your involvement in October. One attempt has already been made. A second attempt has been made by involving my sister, my niece Shagufta, to come and raise that false flag. I obviously became aware of this situation. She was not allowed access to the property, but we did meet outside so she can be assured that his welfare, health and welfare is not being adversely affected. So that was attempt number 2. Then attempt number 3 was with Adalat's involvement. Adalat has then attempted to obviously liaise with us and attempted to raise a false flag through the commissioning of Shagufta to raise a concern. That's obviously failed because she's told me about it. He's attempted to poison us, so we would then necessitate going to the involving the healthcare professionals. Obviously, that's I've had to suffer the consequences of that, but my brother's been safe because of this. Obviously, then subsequently further attempts have been made by the Manningham Housing Association to put together a capacity assessment earlier in the month, and that's all failed. So the resolution that you asked me, the simple question, what can you resolve? How can we resolve the situation? Well, the agenda and narrative that you, the local authority, want to do is go through the courts, because that's the only thing that you can do, because that's how you got the financial responsibility. But in the interim, this is a problem that you've created, and you're asking me for a resolution to this problem. The resolution, obviously, I have is something that is unpalatable to you, and that resolution is for you to recognize that I act as Talib's representative in all spheres, all right, as his, and acting in his best interest, and to liaise with me. So officially, Mr. Browell, we're having this conversation on the telephone, but in writing, you're not liaising with me in writing, are you? You're liaising with my brother Talib in writing. You're not even sending me any emails. You've been instructed not to correspond with me in writing. But you want me to but the local authority want me to correspond with them in writing. But the problem is that you, the local authority, have created this problem. You have created this problem by refusing to recognize that I act in my brother's best interest and I act as his carer. And what you've attempted to do is in August 2022, you've told the DWP to stop my carer's allowance as a result of to basically force me to stop being his carer. Now that's not going to happen. So when you ask me for a resolution, I have a resolution. The resolution was my brother signed a lasting power of attorney in my favour. You removed it. You've left nothing in place with regards to health and welfare. Now there's a problem. And then obviously the resolution I have is that I'm providing this support to Talib because you, the local authority, have a statutory legal duty of care to Talib. You're failing to meet and are being negligent upon those duties, and I'm providing that support and charging you, the local authority, £1 million a week. So those are my solutions. But other than that, that is obviously something that you, the local authority, won't accept or recognize or even look to entertain. But where is Talib presently in this situation? How have you acted in this best interest? So presently Talib has no access to his finances, okay, but he's got no access to any healthcare provisions in place, healthcare services, or anybody to act in his. More importantly, he's got nobody to act on his behalf. And as you're aware, he's potentially facing homelessness or an eviction from his home, and there's nobody representing him. I made you people aware that there was a court proceedings in place. You, the local authority, acting as his deputies, financial deputies, did not represent him in those court proceedings. So, this is a problem that you've created as a local authority to cover up your own failures and incompetencies and malevolence, and then you're asking me to provide you with a solution. And the solution, is not something that you can afford or entertain. So we're in this limbo state, but it does not negate from the fact that Talib has, as an individual, he's got absolutely nothing, no security at all. So with respect, Mr. Browell, what do you want me to say to you? He's got absolutely no security of accommodation, no security of finances, no security of health and well-being. So, and you, the local authority, are refusing to engage with me. So, all right, you've asked me a question. The simple answer I can give is that you're not in a position to resolve anything which we've concluded. One way forward would be for me to sit down with the decision maker and try to find a amicable resolution, and that can only happen on a face-to-face basis. So on the one hand, you want to see Talib on a face-to-face basis, and he has concerns and I have concerns regarding your motives. But alternatively, I want to have a face-to-face consultation with the decision maker looking to resolve the situation, and the decision maker is hiding behind the corporate veil, affronting either you or the solicitors or somebody else, and sitting in the background making malevolent decisions by looking to nefariously liaise with my siblings and relatives in order to further victimize me, but from behind the corporate veil, but refusing to resolve the situation. So one way that we can look to resolve the situation, this very complex situation, is through dialogue. And that dialogue can only happen on a direct basis, rather than going through intermediaries such as yourself or other proxy agents such as the housing association, acting as an intermediary for the decision maker. So I think the only way that this can be resolved, and I hope you agree with me, is that given the present circumstances, the only way that the situation can be resolved is through dialogue with direct dialogue with the decision maker. What do you think, or can you provide me with an alternative?
First, I wouldn't know who that decision maker is, and I'm not sure if there is just one decision maker as such, and I don't know how I'd facilitate a meeting with that person.
Okay, but
again, I can relay what you've said, but I don't know whether there'll be any kind of resolution from that.
Okay, but could you accept there is a decision? Has to be a decision maker, doesn't there?
Okay, right, yeah.
No, do you accept that in any, because obviously, for example, Mr. Browell, if I'm speaking to you on an individual basis, all right, if I for example say to you, oh, Mr. Browell, how would you like to come out for a drink with me on Friday, all right, you're the decision maker, but you can't. So that would be on a personal basis. I can make arrangements with you, and those are your decisions because you're a private individual. But under these circumstances, that would be inappropriate because you're not acting in a private capacity. You're acting as an employee of an organization, so you're not in a position to make that decision, are you? So, but there's somebody that's going to be making that decision. There has to be. Do you accept that there has to be a decision maker if it's not you?
I think because the matters in many respects with the courts, it's quite often it involves several agencies, and it might be following advice from the OPG or from the courts, as filtered through like the legal department of the local authority. So I'm not sure if there's one person who's making decisions. It's usually just kind of following process, I think.
Well, no. I understand that, Mr. Browell, but that's just convoluting the matter. For example, under these circumstances, there's two parties. There's the Office of the Public Guardian, all right? Office of the Public Guardian act on behalf of the Public Guardian. So there is a final decision maker, the Public Guardian, and obviously there is a final decision maker in the local authority, which is the chief executive of the CEO of the organization. Obviously, when there's two or more parties, for example, under these circumstances, there are two or more parties. There's the Office of the Public Guardian and the local authority. All right, but even in those circumstances, there is one party that takes the lead. So there's a lead party. So, for example, if there were 10 people, all right, on a table collectively making a decision, once the decision has been made by the collective, there has to be a chairperson. The chairperson says, look, yes, this is the decision we're taking, and they are ultimately the decision maker in collaboration with as the chair. So there is always a singular person. And for you to state to me that you don't know who this decision maker is, and I'll go back to my earlier example. If I ask you for meeting me for a drink on Friday, there is no other decision maker other than you, is there? Yeah, But if there's any other decisions that's being made, you surely need to know who that decision maker is. Hence why I always ask who your manager is, because any decision in a large corporation, there is a corporate structure, and the final, there may be other intermediary decision makers like your supervisor or manager may authorize you to go and visit the property, as I would think. Yeah, that's a local decision that they have authority to do so on behalf of the the CEO decision maker, because that's a localized thing. Like some like generals have the capacity to make decisions on the ground, but then these circumstances there is a final decision maker who's making the decisions for prosecuting somebody. All right. And you can't give me that name of the person that's the decision maker or somebody I can speak to, because as a prosecuting body, as a local authority, if you're taking legal action against somebody, that's not your decision, is it? Or it's not going to be any manager's decision. It has to be a director, or hence why they call directors, or chief executive officer. It has to be an executive or a director's decision. So there must be a person that making that decision. And you're saying to me that you don't even know who that person is, and I've given you several names, isn't it? I've given you the name of your manager, Vicina Brown's manager, Nadia Khan's manager, Mark Truin, or above that there's a health and well-being director, whose name escapes me. Then above that there's obviously the, as a health and well-being director, the accountable to the chief executive officer. There's all of this structure. Somebody's making these decisions, and obviously you've asked me to as how to resolve the situation. I have resolved the situation. Alright, me and my brother have resolved the situation through the legal framework of putting a lasting power of attorney in place. It is you, the local authority, and the Office of the Public Guardian that have made the decision to remove that. That's not been done whimsically, or that's not been done by somebody who's unknown. There are named people. Alright, the Nick Goodwin is the public guardian. Kirsten England is the chief executive of Bradford Council. You've taken the decision to remove the lasting power of attorney. You've accepted in this telephone call that, in the absence of myself, my brother's now been placed at risk for health and welfare, because obviously there's nobody legally acting in his capacity. You're officially acting in his capacity as deputy for his finances. All right. And you're leaving him without any money, but that's a separate matter. But can you understand? You're asking me to resolve a problem that you've created and that you're unwilling to resolve. And every week.
No, it just seems no, but I mean, I think it shows again the kind of where it's at a stalemate, because I mean, you wouldn't agree with the local authority becoming LPA for Talib's health and welfare, and the local authority have prevented you from being LPA. So again,
no, just hold on. No, sorry, Mr. Browell. I think you have the facts incorrect here. I have not prevented the local authority from being his LPA holder. Right, the LPA holder is something that you have to do. So, the local authority have not made an application to be his LPA holder for health and welfare. They've not made an application to be his, deputy for health and welfare. Those are the only two options available under the legal options available. Either you have a lasting power of attorney or you have a deputy in place. If the deputy only comes into place where it's been established that somebody lacks mental capacity. So in the case you the local authority have done that in the case of his finances, but not in the case of his health and welfare. The lasting power of attorney was in place. You've removed that. You've not put a substitute in place. You've not even attempted to put a substitute in place. Alright, what you have done previously, prior to the lasting power of attorneys in 2019, is in 2018 you've taken legal proceedings to have me removed as nearest relative in favour of the health and well-being director at Bradford Council. So that's failed in the past. So you the local authority have attempted to be the nearest relative, alright, and deposed me as nearest relative for my brother. That was in 2018, and that is only because the nearest relative rights are recognised in a law under the not mental capacity act, but the Mental Health Act 1983. So there's a recognised right of the nearest relative. Obviously you were holding my brother unlawfully, detaining him under a section. The legislation provides legal rights to the nearest relative. I established myself as the nearest relative after showing you that I acted, that, obviously my mother was the nearest relative, then I became the nearest relative, and then you look to depose me as the nearest relative. So this stalemate has been created not because of what I'm doing or any of my decisions, but it is the need of the local authority to not recognize me as his carer. So the stalemate is not because of what I'm doing. I'm his carer. You're trying to change that fact, and you're trying to change that fact because through unlawful legal means, by buying off the judges, by buying off the courts, by taking legal action to respectively remove any rights I have for my siblings or the people that I call as trust beneficiaries. So just for your clarity of understanding, I act as Talib's trustee, trust beneficiary under an uncodified trust created in the year 2000 by my mother as trustee. That's what it's uncodified, so you can't go up to the any registered office to see that. You can't even bribe my solicitors to see that uncodified document, because it's uncodified to start with. All right, you, the local authority, did not know this. And you, the local authority, assumed that I was doing all this stuff out of the goodness of my heart. And that's not the case. And I think that we need to understand this. And I think we've had this conversation in the past. Mr. Browell, I want to make it quite clear that I would not look after or take care of my own mother, who's birthed me and raised me. I would not look to take care of her or act on her behalf in an informal capacity. So even my own mother had to put something in place formally in order for me to provide her with support and services. And it's highly unfair and unjust, because other people may do it that you deal with that are maybe nice and benevolent, that they do nice and benevolent informal things for their relatives. That's not me. I don't do anything for anybody, not even my own mother, in an informal capacity. My mother had to pay me money in order for me to provide her with any support or represent her. That goes back, and that is through the uncodified instrument of a legal trust in place. So under that framework, can you understand, it's only fair that I'm saying that there should be some legal framework in place for my brothers, for me and my brother. That's all I'm asking for. That's only fair, isn't it?
I can ask that question. I need to get off the phone shortly, but is there anything else you want me to ask?
Well, obviously, yes. I mean, so can you just summarize to me what you're going to be asking? Because obviously, I've made you aware that my brother, when I spoke to you last, it was all to do with my brother Adalat, wasn't it? And his involvement and what he's been doing. I've raised those as safeguarding alerts in 2018 that he's basically stolen all of Talib's money. All right, you've told me that there's court proceedings in place and we can't do anything. That does not resolve the situation. So I've told you previously about the situation of Adalat's involvement, and obviously we are raising safeguarding alerts.
I can answer your question, but I need to get off the phone. So you spoke about the money that went to Adalat, so you wanted an answer about that, where it is at with the local authority recovering that money on Talib's behalf.
And what legal actions they're going to take against Adalat, considering that they've taken legal actions against me. So we've discussed that in the past, and today obviously I've made you aware of further ongoing issues regarding his health and welfare, how he's in a precarious situation because there's no legal framework in place for his health and welfare. Obviously, if you attempt to take legal actions as you did in my mother's case, because even in my mother's case, you were not her health and welfare deputy, all right? You had this other involvement, but you were forced to become her. Obviously, I will be resisting any attempt for you to take any health and welfare legal responsibility, but irrespective, you place my brother in at risk and in a precarious situation because he's got nobody formally or legally acting in his health and welfare interest. That's the only thing I wanted to raise with yourself, and I want to know what the legal authority's position is regarding my brother's health and welfare, considering that you've removed his lasting power of attorney for health and welfare, and you've not put any substitute in place, and presently you're refusing to recognise me at my rights and who I am and my remuneration costs, and basically asking me to do things for free which I'm not agreeing to and I don't accept, and I need to know what the local authority's position is regarding, Talib's health and welfare status and who is to legally represent him. Because obviously, I would challenge your right to legally represent Talib's health and welfare, considering you have no, direct involvement or input in his health and welfare, and I do. Considering I provide him with 24-hour care 7 days a week. So that's the only thing I wanted to bring to your attention.
Okay, yeah, I'll try and get the answers on that. If I give you a call on Thursday, is that alright?
What time?
About 2 o'clock.
Yeah, 2 o'clock on Thursday is fine. I look forward to speaking to you then, Mr. Browell. Have a nice day.
Alright, thank you. Cheers, Shazad. See you now.
Goodbye.
Thanks, bye.